from the Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. Game week 33, and we've actually had a couple of games in Cloud this midweek ahead of the FA Cup final blank fixtures. So the Aston Villa visit to Manchester City on Tuesday, and Arsenal at home to Crystal Palace on Wednesday were fixtures brought forward because those sides are playing in the FA Cup this weekend, or at least three of them are. And then, as you can see from the screen, Forest v Brentford. Forest are the fourth wheel, so to speak, in the FA Cup semi-finals. They play Brentford on May Day, so next Thursday in their catch-up game. So three teams had games brought forward, two were playing each other, and one team has had theirs pushed back, basically because Forest were playing Tottenham on Monday night last week, but that in Cloud was in the previous game week. Slightly confusing. When we get into phase 2 next year, we're going to be back to the regular Friday to Thursday game weeks, so everybody should know what they're up to. So, evening David, in the chat, nice to see you on this lovely Friday evening, certainly in the Midlands anyway. So we're going to have a look at fixtures first. We had a question of John, who basically asked, after the FA Cup semi-finals this weekend, when do you think they will announce the updated match days? Well, you would like to think that they must have a contingency plan for all four teams going through in various permutations. So I think that makes 6 permutations in all. So you would like to think that before Forest play on Thursday, we should know when the rearranged games are going to be. And if we have a look at the calendar here, so we can see the games that are still to be decided are from currently sitting on fixture day 106 on the right hand, well, third from the right there. And the games to still be determined, the dates of when they're going to be played, are Aston Villa v Tottenham. We have Crystal Palace v Wolves, Manchester City v Bournemouth, and Nottingham Forest visiting West Ham. Evening Dave, second Dave as well, and John, evening. John says, just watching Jordan Clark's FIFA. Well, that's one of the few things that's gone right on my fancy cricket, John. I actually have Mr. Clark. Anyway, enough of that. I'll catch up with John later on the cricket. So the games to be moved for the FA Cup final, which is on Saturday, 17th of May, we're not quite sure whether they're going to be brought forward or pushed back. Now, the one caveat that we do know is that if Aston Villa win on Saturday against Crystal Palace, their game against Tottenham, currently scheduled for Sunday, the 18th of May, is going to get brought forward. And it will almost certainly be on Wednesday. What's that going to be? Wednesday, the 14th of May. The other ones are slightly trickier. I fancy that if Aston Villa play Manchester City in the FA Cup final, I think in fairness to both teams, I think they'll bring Manchester City's game forward against Bournemouth, and I think that will be played on the Tuesday, so that would be the 13th of May. However, if Crystal Palace or Nottingham Forest reach the FA Cup final, I don't think their games will be brought forward, mainly due to the fact they have to play on Sunday, May the 11th, because Palace are playing Tottenham, who play the second leg of their Europa semi-final on the preceding Thursday, so their match must be played on the Sunday. And Nottingham Forest against Leicester has been picked for television coverage by Sky. I think they're at 2 p.m. or maybe 2:15 kick-off on that Sunday. So I don't think anybody's going to suggest that either Forest or Palace play Sunday, Wednesday in a rearranged match preceding an FA Cup final. I think if either of those two teams reach the final, their match is much more likely to be pushed back, and I think it would be played on Thursday, which would be something like the 21st, 22nd of May. The reason being that the Wednesday is the actual date of the Europa League final. So hopefully by the time we get to early next week, this will all become clear. It's not great that they've left it this long. They could have put a provisional out, but is there much point in saying it's going to be on week A or week B? The Villa game against Tottenham is already on 2 different times, according to whether other teams qualify for the FA Cup final. So it is a little bit of a mess, but we are where we are. So in all honesty, John, I think we should know early next week, and we ought to know before Nottingham Forest play Brentford on Thursday, May Day. So, with that in mind, I have filtered from the transfer planner the last 6 weeks of data for strikers from, well, strikers in the game at least, from Brentford and Nottingham Forest. Because as you see on the calendar part, they play each other on Thursday the 1st of May, and then Brentford go on a run against Manchester United, Ipswich, Fulham and Wolves, and Nottingham Forest play Crystal Palace away on another green fixture, so a single game day, the aforementioned game against Leicester, the visit to West Ham, which will likely be either a single game day or definitely a day where there's only 2 games if Forest reach the FA Cup final, and then they finish against Chelsea, which could be a Champions League decider still. But the data, we can see Mbeumo out in the front on 42 points for the last 6 games, Wissa on 38, Elanga 32, Lewis Potter, who, believe it or not, is a striker in Cloud due to that's where TFF decided he was going to play. Even though he's playing at left back or left wing back on 17. João Silva, who is basically a substitute for Forrest on 17. And Chris Wood, who has 17. So the 2 most popular players throughout the season for the 2 clubs have been Mbeumo and Wood, certainly in attacking areas anyway. And there's a lot to think that Forest, a lot of people have got Matt Sells, a lot of people have got one of their defenders. So if you have, do you necessarily need to go for a striker as well? I mean, that's a personal choice. If Forest end up with 3 single game days, or close to single game days, then additional coverage might not be too bad. But do the figures here put us in mind of Brentford instead of Forest anyway? So the notes are, you can see the points 42 and 17. So 6 starts for Mbeumo and only 4 for Wood. Now, one of those was a resting ahead of the FA Cup. I think it was the quarter-final. We know he's not going to get arrested ahead of the semi-final because the fixture's been put back and he'll likely play. But if Forest end up with a fixture just after an FA Cup final or just before, is Chris Wood going to play in it? I guess a lot would depend on the league position at the time. And there is always a chance that he could get injured in one of the matches. I guess the same as for Mbeumo as well. But is Nuno going to play Chris Wood in every game? You would think he probably would, because he knows he needs goals. Even if it's only to win 1-0, you've got to score at least 1. So, interesting. And then we look at the goals. In that period, Mbeumo has 3, Chris Wood has 1. Mbeumo has also got 2 assists in that time. Shots on target, Mbeumo has 5 points to Chris Wood's 4. and he also has 4 tackle points. So overall, 42 points in 6 game weeks, so 7 points per week on an average. And then Wood, 17. He's not played in all of the games, he's only played in 4, so maybe it's fairer to say he averaged 4 per game. So that's only just half as many. So there's the data. I think maybe an extra single game day or 2 might sway some people towards Chris Wood, especially if you don't have any other Forest coverage. But otherwise, I think it looks fairly clear cut that Mbeumo is ahead in the battle of these two, if not elsewhere. So go back to the fixture layout again here, because we had a question off Cloud FF Loser, and it's for those who risk the Saka in transfer, and yours truly was one of those, which has not paid off. And you're right, it hasn't paid off. Nobody could have foreseen how little Saka was going to play, especially after he got another little niggly injury on the weekend. But the question is, would you consider moving him back on, and who would be your main targets if so? So I have had a look here. So this is for the same time period, so the last 6 game weeks, and obviously there's going to be a little bit of additional matches played by certain teams. So Crystal Palace have played twice in 2 consecutive game weeks. Newcastle played them in one of those, and Arsenal played them in one of the others. So the other teams that have played additional games are Arsenal, Manchester City and Aston Villa. I have a feeling there's another one as well, but I can't put my finger on it. So that'll be why certain players here listed are close to the top. So Barnes, Trossard, Murphy, Eze, Rice, Tielemans, Marino, Kovacic have all played additional games. Barnes is sitting at the top. For those that are playing in phase 2 and have gone for Harvey Barnes, fair play. There's been some cracking scores in that I've seen. Trossard has obviously been playing up front while Saka's been resting. Murphy has been amazing. But then the next 2 on the list are players that haven't had additional fixtures and are good cloud assets in their own right. So we have Bruno Fernandes and Jared Bowen. So if I just move back to the fixtures, because one thing I wanted to note here is if you look at Arsenal, they don't play this week because obviously their fixture was brought forward. Now, do we think that Saka is going to play on Saturday against Bournemouth? It's in the middle of the PSG semi-finals. They do have Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday. So the layover time is better than it was for Aston Villa when they played PSG. And Liverpool as well, for that matter, I think. Yes. So they do have 3 days in between and 3 days after. But assuming that Liverpool have won the league, they only need a draw against Tottenham on Sunday. What are Arsenal going to have to play for? And I think the square root of naff all is probably about the sum of the parts. So I have a feeling that Arteta will definitely be rotating players against Bournemouth, and Saka will be part of that rotation. Whether he gets 15, 20, 25 minutes at the end because he needs a few more minutes is debatable. He could do, but I very much doubt he will start. So you then look at their following fixtures when in all likelihood the league will have been lost because Liverpool have another game at Chelsea, even if they don't finish the job against Tottenham, and that's assuming that Arsenal do beat Bournemouth a week tomorrow. So Arsenal's fixtures after that are Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, and then they do finish with an easy one at Southampton away. But hopefully for Arsenal, they'll be ahead of the Champions League final that weekend as well. So you can see there's several teams that have got, well, 3 for 1s over Arsenal, and it could be 3 for 0s. Brighton's won there, you can see straight off. Bournemouth themselves, Brentford. So if you, for some reason, only have 2 strikers currently, then maybe Saka to Mbeumo is a no-brainer next week straight off the bat. But we have discussed on this show previously, most teams have at least 2, and the vast majority have had 3 strikers all season. So I think most people will be in that boat. So we can see Everton there, if you fancy Everton, or Fulham, Ipswich also. Who else do we have? And Wolves at the bottom. So there might be some latitude in going for a Wolves striker if you've got a slot as well, maybe. But I think if you could, and Mbeumo is probably the one. But when it comes to midfielders, the 2 that were noted on the points were Bruno Fernandes and Jarrod Bowen. So we can see that Bruno Fernandes, they played Bournemouth this week, but that is ahead of their Europa League semi-final in Bilbao on Thursday. And then they play Brentford the following Sunday, which is in between the 2 semi-finals. Then they have West Ham. They play Chelsea on the single game day, which has an advantage on the Friday before the FA Cup final, and they finish their season at home to Aston Villa. And then Jarrod Bowen's West Ham, they visit Brighton tomorrow, and then they have a very interesting run of fixtures. They play Tottenham at home on a week on Sunday, which is after Tottenham have played in the Europa League semi-final somewhere up in near where you go and visit Father Christmas. The following Sunday they play at Manchester United just after they have played their second leg of their Europa League semi-final against Atletico Bilbao. And then on the penultimate week they play Nottingham Forest, which is, as previously mentioned, if Forest reach the FA Cup semi-final, that could be moved either forward or back to a single or a double game day. And their season finishes at Ipswich away. Ipswich will be relegated. Could be an attacking game. Could be anything from 2-2 to 4-5 on that weekend. So I think one of those 2 would probably be the pick for me. And with the possibility of a single or a double game day, plus the excellent looking fixtures against Tottenham and Manchester United at their time of need, and a trip to Ipswich on the final game of the season, I think of those I would probably be picking Bowen. The other thing to look at maybe is the single game days. So we know Nottingham Forest v Brentford. There's a Manchester City against Wolves. So if you don't have anybody from City, maybe you could look at Kovacic has been playing well. Foden's obviously a non-runner now. Then we have Chelsea v Manchester United, as previously mentioned. Palace against Forest. So who've Palace got at the end? They've got Forest, Tottenham, Wolves and Liverpool. Nothing really to play for. I think their season really does sort of depend on how it goes on Saturday against Aston Villa in the FA Cup. And then the final single game day that we can see so far is Brighton against Liverpool. So not much to do in midfield there either, really. I doubt many people will be buying Mitoma ahead of Liverpool and a visit to Tottenham. So that's where we stand with those. So let me click off that for a minute. And we're going to have a look at the leaderboards because it's all very tight. Joint leaders are Shane White with his Whitco United and Jez with his Page team. And now I have a feeling that it is Jez Page and he didn't get his team name right on the original selection back in either July or August when it was put together. But they are joint leaders on 3,170 points. Shane's had a better week so far with 28, double of Jez, 14. Mark McFadden is 4 points behind, currently in third on 3,166. And then we do have a bit of a gap to Neil Fleeson 3148, Adrian Gage 3137, Julian Wardle, well done Julian, 3136, and I note you're at the top of the Fantasy Football Hub Members League. Well done. Mark Berry 3133, Mark Williamson 3132, Mark Hawes 3125 alongside Thomas Lavelle. Well done to all of you. And if we have a quick look at who's done the best in the game week, some cracking scores there. 48 from Phil Moore, 47 from FPL Ronarid, 46 from Mark Robinson, well done Mark, 45 from Kelvin Guest and Kieran Sutton, so well done. And Thomas Lavelle up to 9th overall, he's got 41 for the week, and a certain Paul McNulty from the Nip and a Half podcast, well done Paul, 41, Sam White 41, Gary Carter 40, and Leicester 14's Colin Johnson, well done Colin. So let's have a look at the match centres. I'm just going to put this back to week 36. No, it needs to go back another week, week 35. Is that right? Or are we on 36? I think we did that last week. I think it's 36. Let's go back on here. We're in a funny order here, I think. Okay, so we'll do Wednesday. We'll go in reverse order. So from Wednesday. Unless that's let's go back to front. So Wednesday, Arsenal 2, Palace 2. Goal scorers were Kivior and Trossard for Arsenal, and for Palace we had Eze and Mateta. With it was a good finish from Mateta, but Smudger Smith on Sky thinking it was one of the best goals he's ever seen. It was near enough an open goal on the side he shot it into. So come on, Alan. It was a good finish, but it wasn't one of the best goals you've ever seen. That's an absolute certainty. So on the tier 3s, we had Kivior and Saliba and Partey with the passes. Look at Saliba there, 163 passes. So if we extrapolated that out for 75 for 3, that'd be something like 10 or 11 points for 163 if it was extrapolated that way. No tier 3s for Palace. Manchester City 2, Aston Villa 1 on the Tuesday. Goal scorers were Bernardo Silva and Mateus Nunes in the 94th minute. Marcus Rashford penalty. A little bit of chat about whether that was a penalty or not. It looked a clear foul to me. You don't really get away with that in rugby, let alone football. But a little bit of debate, which is always what Sky want to show. Tier 3s were Gavardiol with the passes. So Monday Night Football, Tottenham 1, Nottingham Forest 2. Early lead for Forest. Goals through Anderson and Wood. Richarlison with a late consolation. Tottenham really only considering Thursdays now as their fixture days, I think. Tier 3s, Richarlison with the shots, and Murillo and Williams with the tackles for Forest. The late game on Sunday was Leicester 0, Liverpool 1. Trent with his celebratory goal off the bench, putting his a flag or his shirt as a corner flag. Tier 3s, Hermanson with the saves for Leicester, Van Dijk with the passes and Gakpo with the shots for Liverpool. The early games on Sunday, Manchester United 0, Wolves 1. Goal scorers was Sarabia for Wolves. Tier 3s for Mazraoui and Dorgu with the tackles for United, and Bueno and Andre with the tackles for Wolves. Ipswich 0, Arsenal 4. Goal scorers Trossard with a brace, Martinelli and Nwaneri. Lots of tier 3s for Arsenal. In the passes, we had Zinchenko, Saliba, White, Rice and Odegaard, and Mikel Merino with the tackles. And he went off. He had 6 tackles and went off before the hour. Fulham 1, Chelsea 2. Goal scorers for Fulham were Iwobi, 20th minute. George and Neto at the 83rd and 93rd minute for Chelsea. Tier 3s, Leno with the saves and Sessegnon with the tackles. Nobody for Chelsea. Aston Villa 4, Newcastle United 1, a Saturday evening game. Goal scorers were Watkins, Maatson, Dan Burn own goal and Onana for Villa. And a Fabian Schär goal for Newcastle United. Tier 3s for Maatson and Tielemans with the tackles, Rodgers with the shots for Villa. And for Newcastle, Pope with the saves. Saturday afternoon games, West Ham 1, Southampton 1. Goal scorers were Bowen for West Ham and Ugochukwu for Southampton. No tier 3s in the game. Lunchtime game. Was it a lunchtime game? No, there was no lunchtime games. They were all 3 p.m. early doors. Everton 0, Manchester City 2. Goal scorers at the end were O'Reilly and Kovacic. Tier 3s for Gvardiol and Diaz, both with a passing, and Garner for Everton with the tackles. And then Palace against Bournemouth, 0-0, no goal scorers. And tier 3s for Hewson, Zabane with the passes, and Utara with the shots for Bournemouth. Brentford 4, Brighton 2, goal scorers and Buemo with a brace, Wissa and Norgard for Brentford. Brighton, Welbeck and Mitoma. Tier 3s, Wissa with the shots for Brentford, and Weaver with the tackles for Brighton. So let's have a look at the team on the planner, and you can see highlighted yellow at the bottom is Jared Bowen, and that is because I am very much considering taking Saka out for him on Saturday. As previously discussed, I don't think he's going to play on Saturday week, and West Ham have the fixtures. They have good fixtures. Bowen is their talisman. He's doing well in the stats that we've seen for midfielders, so I think he's a good buy. And then John's second question, which I'll answer now. In your 11, injuries aside, which players are potentially on the chopping block? So you can see where my potential issues might be, John. So Bowen will leave me with 3 transfers left. And then it looks like I'm moving Isak to Mbeumo on Thursday. The reason for Isak moving on is because I need the forward slot. Marmoush has a single game day in the following day on Friday the 2nd of May against Wolves. And Salah has one on the penultimate weekend on the Monday Night Football against Brighton. And I do also have Murphy for Newcastle, so if Isak's doing something, hopefully Murphy will be the player to bring him back the assists, or even to get on the end of flick-ons or assists from Isak himself. So it's more of a needs must. I don't like the idea of taking Isak out, but I think with the fixtures and the form, and Mbeumo looks like a guy to bring in. And then you can also see, looking a bit further ahead, this is a move for Gvardiol over Robinson on Friday. Again, it looks strange making a move on a Friday ahead, but Robinson will have already played his game. He'll have played it this week. So see, it's 4 for 4 really over those. And with it being a single, there's a chance that Gvardiol becomes the captain if Marmoush has another off day. And we do think that Aston Villa or Manchester City reaching the FA Cup final is favourites, which would lead to another single game day or double game day, an offset game anyway, in pre or post the FA Cup final. So they are three moves I'm looking at, which would leave me with one transfer, which would be to be decided. I think it would probably end up going on whoever was going to be the other single game day in the last midweek of the season. So that's where we stand with what my team looks like. So we've got Sells in goal. At the back currently Saliba, Robinson and Munoz. In midfield we have Kluivert, Palmer, Murphy and Saka, who might well become Bowen tomorrow. And then up front, Isak, Marmoush and Salah. So games to look forward to this week. There is an early kickoff. It's Chelsea against Everton. Chelsea are sort of ahead of their Conference League match on Thursday. Very difficult to know what Maresca does with his side. We know what Moyes is going to do with his, but they have had an injury at the back. Name escapes. Tarkowski is not going to play for the rest of the season, so they are going to be sort of a scratch centre-back pairing. Chelsea, difficult to know what they're going to do, difficult to know what side he's going to pick. I'd side with a low-scoring game, maybe a 1-0 win to Chelsea. Brighton against West Ham. I think this has potential to be fairly entertaining. Both sides like to get on the front foot. Brighton are a bit better at it than West Ham, but they also missing Van Heck at the back. He's had a concussion protocol, so maybe that will leave more opportunity to get forward. I think it might be quite entertaining. I'm going to go for goals. Maybe Brighton to sneak it 2-1. Newcastle against Ipswich. I think Newcastle will be far too good for Ipswich. They need to get back on the horse after getting thumped at Villa Park last Saturday night. Eddie Howe's back on the ground from what I'm led to believe after his pneumonia episode. I think Newcastle will be too good for Ipswich. I doubt Ipswich will score. I'm going to go for a 3-0 win. Southampton against Fulham. A side you know what you're going to get. It's pretty poor with Southampton against a side who you don't really know what you're going to get with Fulham. They'll beat Liverpool one week and then lose to somebody unexpected the next. I think Southampton will probably score. They often score one. Fulham. Muniz is not playing, so Jimenez is. I think Fulham have been quite decent. Southampton, will they get on the front foot? Possibly. I'll go for Fulham to win 2-1 away. And then the last of the 3 p.m s, there's no 17:30 in the league. It's a FA Cup. I think it's 5:15 in the FA Cup, actually. Villa against Palace. Might be 5:45. One or the other anyway. Wolves against Leicester, the last of the 3 p.m s. I think Wolves will be too good for Leicester. I doubt Leicester will score again. I'll go for a 2-0 easy win for Wolves. And then Sunday games. The early one is Bournemouth against Manchester United. I think Manchester United will have at least one eye, probably an eye and a half on Thursday. I'm going to go for Bournemouth to win, but United score, probably Fernandes, 2-1 home win. And then the game where Liverpool can probably clinch the league, 4:30 Super Sunday, a proper Super Sunday. Tottenham at least the same as Manchester United with an eye and a half on Thursday. I think Liverpool will be far too good. I think if they score in the first half, they might score 2 or 3 in the second. Tottenham to get one on the break, possibly. I don't know. Maybe not. Possibly. High scoring game. Liverpool to win 3-1. And then the single game day this week on Thursday that we've discussed, Forest against Brentford. I think Forest will try and keep it tight. Brentford won't. I think Brentford will score. Will Forest be able to score? Probably. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. And that, everybody, brings us to the end. So thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the football over the weekend. Plenty to get stuck into. League and FA Cup. If you've enjoyed the video, please drop it a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. I don't know why that's there, actually. I've put the wrong slide on, but never mind. This was last week's. So yeah, if you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. If you like the look of the transfer planners that we've utilised in the show, please find us over on Patreon, patreon.com, Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. So enjoy your weekend, enjoy the football, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody. Bye for now.